Save it, load it, check it, quick rewrite it, plug it, play it, burn it, rip it, drag and drop it, zip, unzip.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to this webinar, Better Together with D2iQ. My name is Philippe Thériault. I'm a Chief Revenue Officer with MayaData. All right, today I'm assisted with Michael, who's with D2iQ, Principal Solution Architect, as well as Murat, who's VP Product on the MayaData side. So it's a pleasure for us to co-host that event with our great partner, D2iQ. We believe in the value of deploying OpenEBS, deploying Konvoy with OpenEBS, and deploying OpenEBS in Konvoy to manage stateful applications, stateful workloads in Kubernetes. D2iQ, formerly known as Mesosphere, released a very comprehensive product recently. And we stepped in the minute that product was available to make sure that OpenEBS was a prime citizen on that platform. Today, I'm going to cover, or we will cover together, a quick overview of what is OpenEBS Enterprise Platform, which is the MayaData product. Michael will cover, give you a brief introduction on Konvoy and how great of a distribution of Kubernetes it is. And then we're going to talk about the benefits of using the two solutions combined together. We will also talk about the typical use cases and a quick demo. So to give you an overview of what is OpenEBS Enterprise Platform, let's talk about talking about container attached storage. So OpenEBS Enterprise is the only cloud-native solution designed and architected specifically for cloud-native workloads. It's built on Kubernetes for Kubernetes. It's built by DevOps and software developers, SRE for the exact same people. It addresses and fixes two very big problems with Kubernetes. Deploying and managing stateful applications on Kubernetes is difficult. Konvoy itself is a stateful application. Prometheus is also a stateful application. And even the most stateless application at one point has some state. And why? Well, you know, you invest a lot of time, love, and energy in refactoring your applications, but data has gravity, right? Some of the benefits of Kubernetes are a little bit killed or diminished by the fact that you rely on external solutions. That diagram explains that very well. Well, what's the point of refactoring your application, deploy them as a set of microservices in Kubernetes if for your stateful applications, well, they are anchored down one specific environment. Could be your test environment, could be your personal computer, could be one cloud provider, and so on. So you kind of drag that big anchor. It kills the productivity of your software developers. It takes time to rewire those connections between your PV and your PVC. The concept of container attached storage is that every application gets its own storage controller delivered as a set of microservice. It lives inside of the Kubernetes user space. So whatever the users are allowed to do inside of Kubernetes, wherever you have fixed the boundaries where you want Kubernetes to be deployed and by whom you want it to be managed, your storage controller will give you the exact same benefits. So we're talking about per workload granularity, per workload control, per team, per application. So you don't need to talk to storage admin, because while applications have changed and someone forgot to tell storage, that's our mantra, and we build an entire open source project and a company on that. So that's the concept of container attached storage. We helped define the category with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation a little bit more than a year ago. You can read that blog post on the CNCF website, or available through the MayaData website. And if you come from the infrastructure world, you may know what a product like VMware vSAN is. Well, OpenEBS is like vSAN for your Kubernetes environment. But it has been designed to be managed by the users of Kubernetes, not necessarily by the infrastructure people. And in terms of architecture, well, if we look at the options, well, your storage options in Kubernetes are on the left side. You can use cloud storage. You can use your enterprise shared storage. But again, your application is hardwired to a specific volume. So it's not very agile. You have incompatible snapshots, and you're locked in a specific provider, let's say one specific cloud vendor, one specific vendor on premises, right? You can use local disks or local PV, direct attached storage. You definitely don't have any features coming from that are close to what an enterprise solution will get you. You don't have any HA, definitely no snapshot. And the whole concept of container attached storage delivered by OpenEBS, well, it's kind of the best of both worlds. So we insert here the CAS controller that is basically a storage abstraction layer. It discovers all the local resources or even the remote resources. And then through the virtue of storage classes, you're going to control the storage underneath. So if it runs well on your laptop, you know it's going to run well on any Kubernetes environment at massive scale. OpenEBS could be deployed on top of your existing enterprise storage, cloud storage, or local PV. It's simple, gives you granular control. It is 100% in user space, not disruptive, no long conversations with enterprise architects and so on. Very easy to deploy, as you're going to see in the demo. So we abstract the resources underneath and we manage them for you. And that's the beauty of doing everything inside of Kubernetes. So what's the point of relying on external storage systems? It's Kubernetes is already taking care of the replications, already providing networking as an example. So we leverage what's there, and it could be deployed on any distributions of Kubernetes. Unlike proprietary solutions, OpenEBS doesn't have a kernel module, so it could be deployed anywhere. So that's OpenEBS. It is a cloud-native computing CNCF project. It's 100% open source. It enables DevOps team to manage and deploy their own storage policy. It is not a scale-out storage system, so not a old software-defined storage solution designed years ago that we just refactor and fit in containers. This is 100% Kubernetes and in user space. And we at MayaData, we package it in a commercial distribution. So it's your complete solution for building, testing, running, managing, and monitoring stateful applications on any Kubernetes. And it includes data migration, HA, backup, and disaster recovery. So that's the whole package of OpenEBS Enterprise Platform. It is based on 3 very important pillars. So you have the container attached storage piece to store and protect your data. That's based on the OpenEBS project, 100% open source. We also enable our users with chaos engineering. So there's a tool in the suite that is called Litmus, another open source project that we've started and sponsored at MayaData. So it's chaos engineering for your stateful applications on Kubernetes. So if it passes the Litmus test, you know it's rock solid to be deployed in production at massive scale, right? And then we give you OpenEBS Director that you can deploy on-prem for air-gap environment or for if you have the need for, or offered online as a SaaS offering. It gives you visibility and control on all your stateful applications, regardless of the allocation, as well as advanced features like data migration as a service for HADR, multiple Kubernetes environment or across multiple distributions of Kubernetes, as well as a tool to do the lift and shift of your applications to onboard your applications in Kubernetes. So in short, that's all the features you used to get from a storage admin, but they are delivered as Kubernetes native services. So you don't need to file a request in ServiceNow or whatever system you use to basically attach the storage to your Kubernetes environment. On that, so that's my summary of OpenEBS Enterprise Platform by MayaData. And now over to you, Michael.
Hey, good morning. This is Michael Beisiger. I'm a partner solutions architect with D2iQ. I joined the company 2.5 years ago. So like Philippe said in the beginning, Mesosphere, we used to be named Mesosphere, and our new name is D2iQ. we have been, evolving as a company in the cloud native space, right? And, while initially a technology specific company name made a lot of sense, right? It makes things like marketing, for example, easier. It limits you as your solution portfolio grows with the cloud native journey. And we wanted a new name that really represents what we stand for, which is like run in production at scale, efficient, and deliver business outcomes for organization. This is really the day two part. And do this really in a smart way. This is the IQ part. Delivering an enterprise-grade cloud-native experience. So Murat, I have to ask you to flip the slides for me. Thank you. So when we look at the cloud-native journey, we divided it into phases. So there's educate and adopt, right? This is where we show you, the art of the possible. What are the capabilities that are available, including, partner solutions like we see here with OpenEBS, right? In phase two, we do design and build. Murat, slow down a little bit. We do design and build. We help you design and build your cloud native capabilities. Then follows the deploy and manage phase, where we take you from crawl to walk to run into production, where you end up with a deployment and that is efficient, right, and viable. And the last phase is really the scale phase, right? And this is, your application is running, you get more users, more data, you need to scale. So we don't want you to realize in production that you actually can't scale. We'll take care of that. We also ensure that you're not locked in, that you can go to any cloud provider or on-prem infrastructure. Now you may be on your way in this journey, but independent of where you are, we are here, your partner to help. You need to slow down, Murat, sorry. Can you go back to the previous? Yeah. So let me tell you about the solutions that we are offering, that go across these phases. So there's the updated version of DCOS plus MKE. This is really our Mesosphere Kubernetes engine running on top of DCOS, which is around for quite some time already. And it provides you Kubernetes as a service for your organization, right? If you want to deliver it basically as a service to your organization and in a high density fashion. Then across all these phases, we offer advisory services and support. And then the next step up is Konvoy, which is our Kubernetes distribution, right? It provides your opinionated stack. We always say like batteries included, but swappable, and you will see what add-ons we actually add to just a vanilla Kubernetes. And then there's Kudo, and Kudo is an open source project that we created, and it's really about operating complex stateful workloads. It's a declarative approach to build Kubernetes operators. And they are not specific to Konvoy. They really work on any Kubernetes distribution. And the last item on the list is Kommander. Kommander really gives you the single operations pane to manage all your Kubernetes clusters, whether they run in the cloud provider or on-prem, right? Again, it's not specific to Konvoy. These can be Konvoy clusters and or any other Kubernetes distribution. And Kommander is currently in alpha. Next slide. Now this is a picture from CNCF landscape, and shows all the technologies that are available, right? So the cloud native space is really like a fast moving space. Every time you turn around, there's a new open source project that pops up, a new database, new development tools, or just like the last few weeks, we saw 2 new mesh technologies appearing. And over the next few years, that speed with which these projects will show up will just increase. So for our organization, there are lots of decisions, but also opportunities. And the question is, can you afford as an organization to make all these decisions and make them over and over again? One time around, one decision may be you pick the right technology, but next time around, it may not be the right one. Next slide. So this is just a snapshot, some stats that a colleague did, right? Looking at some projects, and how often they release, security vulnerabilities, why they had to do updates and so on. So even if you stick to a particular technology, you have to keep up with it, right? There are new releases, right, that bring new functionality, that resolve bugs, and you cannot really fall behind. Next slide. So why Konvoy, right? If you look at the picture to the right, you see basically Kubernetes in the middle. If you go on your own, this is where you would start, right? And then you have to make all these decisions, right, on these additional capabilities and adding them to your stack. And then once you're done with this, then you have to figure out, where do I get actual support for this? Right, and you probably will end up with folks that you need to actually have support for your stack. So we really simplify this for you. We make the best decisions possible for you composing the stack. And we also stand behind those decisions with the strength of our company, and we support you. Next slide. So this is our Konvoy stack, that we validate and we test, right? We tie all these servers together and we confirm that they work properly. And we also support all the elements, right? So you don't have to go to other parties actually to get support for these capabilities. So let's take Konvoy for a spin. So I will show you just a few slides. This will be very quick. What I want to give you is kind of an intuitive understanding how easy it actually is to use Konvoy, where you download basically the Go executable. That's gets you to our CLI, right? And in the next few slides, next slide I show you, this is the command workflow, right? So it's just 4 simple commands that you have to know: init, up, check, and down, whereby you up and down is sufficient. If you just want to use basically the default configuration, which is like 3 masters and 4 worker nodes. So if you just want to spin up a cluster quickly to test something out, you're good to go. So Konvoy up really creates you a cluster, right? And so you run the command, and in the end you get some output that gives you 2 things. One is basically the URL to our ops portal, right? And along with the credentials, right? And the other one is basically a command to update the kube config, so that you can just use regular kube control from your command line to interact with the cluster. Next slide. So this is what you get, right? By default, we use provision on AWS. So in this sample, you get the infrastructure. You see basically the EC2 instances at the bottom, right? On these instances, we put down the Kubernetes personality, and then we add these add-ons, right? The batteries included, right? So there's Helm, dashboard. We do metrics with Prometheus and Grafana. We have Elasticsearch and Kibana in the package and so on. And we also, by default on AWS, we install the AWS CSI provider, right? But if you don't want that, right, you want to use, for example, OpenEBS, we show you later in the demo how you actually can achieve that. Next slide. So this is the ops portal. Normally I have a few more screen caps here, or I switch to a demo and show these tools, right? Murat will do this later on. So the ops portal, this is kind of the central point that gives you access to all the different UI elements basically that Konvoy provides. You get to the regular Kubernetes dashboard, you can get to Grafana, Kibana, right? Prometheus, the Prometheus alert manager, and also the traffic admin. Traffic is the ingress that controller that we install by default. Next slide. So once let's say you just brought up that cluster, once you're done with it, you don't need it anymore. All you need to know, I have to do a Konvoy down, right? And that will take care of destroying the cluster. So if you would look, next slide, if you would look into the directory where you actually run the Konvoy command, you will see a cluster.yaml file, right? And this actually has 2 sections. One is the provisioner section. So this is the configuration of the infrastructure. And then there's the cluster configuration section. This is really, which Kubernetes version is used, and which add-ons you want to have active by default, right? So there's a default version of that file, right? if you just do Convoy up, you know, after the up, basically you will see that file, right? And you can actually, if you have a cluster, let's say with 4 nodes, right, you can actually go in here and say, let's, you know, I want 10 worker nodes, right? And then you run just the Convoy up basically again, and we see that in the next slide. So you edit the cluster YAML file, and then you just do a Convoy up. Similar, if you want to do an upgrade, you want to upgrade the Kubernetes version, right? You go into our cluster YAML file, right? You change the Kubernetes version, and then you run a Convoy upgrade. Very, very easy. Next slide. So, you know, initially, I said part of the command flow is also this init. So let's say you want to launch a cluster, you know, and from the get-go, you want to have 10 nodes, right? So in this case, before you run the up, you actually run a Convoy init. And you run it with a provisioner option, right? So default is AWS, you know, and that command will just create you the cluster YAML file. And then you just go in and edit, you know, whatever configuration you want to have from the get-go, and then you do your Convoy up again. Next slide. So besides cloud providers, we also support bare metal, right? So you can also do a Convoy init with the provisioner option set to none. Now, in this case, the cluster YAML file only contains the Kubernetes configuration part, right? What you have to do in addition is author inventory YAML file, and this is basically an Ansible inventory file, right? You know, specifying basically the IP addresses of your nodes. So once you have the 2 files, again, it's just Convoy up to spin up your cluster. Next slide. So I have a few resource slides included. So this is some links to the Convoy resources, you know, way to download it, our documentation, and also a link to our partner solutions catalog, where you also will find the MayaData OpenEBS documentation. Next slide. If you're interested in Kudo, you know, I encourage you to go to the kudo.dev, right? It's all open source, you know, it's an open GitHub project. There's also a project with operators that we built with Kudo. You know, there's a Kafka one, you know, Elasticsearch. I think they're like 4 or 5, a Flink one, and so on. And then if you want, next slide, if you want to learn more about, you know, Kubernetes and Convoy and also Kudo, I encourage you, you know, go to one of our workshops, right? They are complimentary, you know, and there are many upcoming over the next few months.
Thank you so much, Michael, and then Philip as well. So we are gonna go over the Convoy demo, and also, and then we will take a look at how Convoy is installed with stateful kube add-ons running on top of persistent storage provider OpenEBS. So we will go through high-level functionality of Convoy and how to validate OpenEBS provides PVCs and they are healthy. And at the end of the demo, you will have knowledge on these 3 use cases and maybe more. But first of all, protecting Convoy components with OpenEBS. Convoy has stateful components inside, and also protecting your workloads that you run on Convoy with OpenEBS. And finally, so this is one of the challenges of changing technologies. Finally migrating your existing workloads into Convoy, aka across cloud migration, or what we call data migration as a service, DMAS. So if you have an existing cluster somewhere else and an old cluster, you can easily migrate them into Convoy. And then we'll have this demo on Director. Some of the material here, you may find it useful, or if you like to reproduce a demo yourself later, you can do that as well. Convoy documentation, OpenEBS documentation to learn more about advanced features of OpenEBS, and OpenEBS instructions on D2iQ website. So we very straightforward. We will not cover that today. And then MayaData OpenEBS Enterprise Platform that we will use to migrate the workloads and give you topology views. And finally, workshop links in our GitHub repo to reproduce some of the OpenEBS demos. And very quickly, Konvoy with OpenEBS installation is covered in the D2iQ partner instruction site, as I mentioned. And to summarize it, high-level installation is done in 3 phases. You bring up Konvoy without the stateful workloads, and then you do it with the configuration YAML file. And then you install OpenEBS. OpenEBS starts to manage your disk and storage. And then you enable all the stateful components in the YAML file and bring up again the Konvoy, so that completes the stateful components and installs them on OpenEBS. So again, you can find these instructions here. So let's go to the demo, and I have 2 clusters here. One is the old 2-node actually, 2-node and 1 master one of my old Kubernetes clusters. And here is the new Konvoy with 5 workers and 3 master cluster. So just to give you, before we get into a Konvoy demo, give you an idea how OpenEBS manages your devices. You can do this and get the name of block devices, and you can see 1 per node is claimed and used in the C-store pool. And you can also query that by getting the CSP. So they are all healthy and gives me 200 gig of space. Let's go to Konvoy. And this is the Konvoy ops interface Michael was showing earlier. And from this view, you can go to many other dashboards. First of all, let's go to Kubernetes dashboard. And as I mentioned, Kube add-ons now installed on OpenEBS. And you can also see that all here, going to persistent volumes, storage class provided by C-store and various volumes, and claim is coming from different components of Konvoy. And another one here is very useful, comes built-in again, and Grafana and Prometheus. This comes built in with a number of dashboards. What is relevant here is, of course, the persistent volumes, but there are many other useful dashboards. Let's take a look at that as well. In the Kube add-ons, you can see Elastic is installed on OpenEBS, and then you can see the consumption here, and as well as the other. Before we go to OpenEBS Director, last one here, let's open also Kibana. So this gives you a place to manage your logs. And if you go to Discover here, let's take a look, and OpenEBS and error. So nothing recently, but during the install, let's take a look at the last 24 hours. And you can use this to troubleshoot or understand behaviors in your cluster. So very useful. Let's jump into OpenEBS Director now. OpenEBS is installed on my cluster, and I want to get all this enterprise functionality. From the portal, you go to Director Online. And there is also on-prem version of it if you like to deploy the same functionality on-prem and manage it yourself. So exactly the same interface is just installed using a Helm chart. So before I show you all the functionality, let's add our new cluster. And because this is gonna take a minute or so, Konvoy cluster, I think the version was, let's do 110 and connect. So this generates a YAML file, gives you a YAML file to apply on your cluster. You copy, and all you need to do is make sure you are on the Konvoy cluster, of course, and apply. And then let's watch the components in the meantime here. kubectl, get paths, all the new agents and components and view scope and Velero all installed here. Maya system. Let's leave it here and go back to my cluster. Now it quickly adds the cluster. Under the cluster, I can see both clusters. So I'm gonna enable the enterprise functionality and commercial support on this cluster. So while it's doing its magic installing additional components, let me show you what we have here. So on the multi-cloud dashboard, you get all the volumes and how are they protected, how many replicas. You can notice if some workload is deployed with the wrong storage class, you can see that. And let me go to my existing cluster to show what I have here. And now you see different set of menus here. On the application, Director automatically detects all your application based on the image name and then type, and gives you again a single plain dashboard for application view. So what I'm gonna do, so I have this stateful workload on my old cluster. It's easier to show. I'm running a mini on top of OpenEBS. So I clicked on that. I'm seeing the volume here, 10 gig. And so in the meantime, let's create a backup from this. And when you are on the DMAS and take a backup, we support a couple of options here, and more are in the work in the roadmap now. AWS, GCP, and Minio itself as a S3 target. So I'm gonna take a backup to S3 and put it in West2. And I would like to get a daily backup of this workload every day at 1 a.m. and schedule now. So what it does very quickly is it takes a backup of data in application, not only data, including the application configuration into S3. So this will allow me to bring up the same workload on my new cluster. So you can see what I want to show you here is using CStore, we get incremental backup functionality. So my new backup is here, just created seconds ago. Let's take a look, ODJ. So you can see what's in the backup, and you can see this is 22 meg of data. But I have older backups here as well, created 6 days ago. And I'll use this to show you the granularity and this copy on write functionality, how CStore works and makes your backups more efficient. 6 days ago, my data was around 15 meg. And again, I added a couple of files into Minio and the delta was 6. And after that, I haven't changed anything. You can see that my daily backups now don't take any space. They are just metadata, not even megabyte. If there is a change, we only take a backup, that incremental backup of the delta. And from this view, you can restore your backup into any cluster. So let's take a look again, or if the Velero agent is installed, it's not there yet. So in the meantime, let's get into topology view. So from the application, you can see my applications here. One thing I want to show is first topology view. If you click on that topology icon, you can see that filter here. Now you get a nice topology view. You can see application from deployment to PVC to PV to actual volume itself, and then the CStore. If you detect any abnormal behavior with the application, you can easily come here and see, oh, okay, one of my volume, one of my disk failed on cloud. This is it's time to replace. And from this view, you can see persistent volumes. Direct from this view, you can take a snapshot. And using that snapshot also, you can create, you can see my new snapshot is created here. And you can create a clone from that snapshot to be mounted to another instance where you run. Let's get back to Director again. One more feature before we go to the DMAS demo, Builtin analytics. So for around 8 popular stateful workloads, Director also comes built in with application-specific analytics. So in this case, we detect that it is a menu and give you relevant analytics dashboard for the menu. And if you expand that view, you get this menu dashboard. So what is relevant to menu, if there are any offline disks and uptime. So this is a single instance menu and you can see the traffic, and you don't need to dig in and find the right graph and install and do all this right by installing adding my cluster into the platform. I get all that functionality. And if you like to see the high view of the topology, everything in one screen, so this will be much more detailed view. So you can also do that, and this gives you view of from top using a storage class. So we what applications or PVCs use the storage class, and then volumes, and then under the volumes you can see go down to the disk level. So one thing let's see what I have here. So I think should have elastic. Should have. You can also use the filter view to get a more detailed view here. And let's take a look at the menu. Because I'm on my old cluster, I get this view. So there is a menu on OpenEBS. I should do this on the new cluster, Konvoy. And if I go to topology view on Konvoy, you will see all the cube add-ons and additional components deployed with the Konvoy. So a lot of work here. And so on this view, you will be able to see elastic. This filters everything and removes, and you can see disk utilization, how are they using, and take backups from this view. Quick check, yes, Velero is up, and let's cancel this. And I want to show you, let's switch to my old cluster. So I have get NS. You can see I have menu on OpenEBS, and what's in this menu on OpenEBS? A deployment, and let's get the SVC. So this is the endpoint for that, and you can see, let's get kubectl, get namespaces, and you don't see the, and let's put this on watch. You don't see the menu on OpenEBS, and let's migrate it over. And in the meantime, I'm gonna open this window. So 9000 port. So this is the data in my Minio cluster. I put some files here. Go back to home where you have all the workloads, and from the DMAS, I'm gonna pick the latest backup I have created and restore. And now you have an option to restore the same workload either on an existing cluster, my old cluster, or the new cluster. So when it's used with the new cluster, what it means is you are actually migrating that workload or creating a clone of the exact workload. Hopefully my credentials are correct here. And we can see that in the progress. If not, I'll use another one. But so this will update quickly.
In the meantime, Murat, I will just say thanks for the questions in the Q&A. If you have questions, the Q&A session will be in a couple of minutes. You can just click on the Q&A button at the button on the bottom of the screen.
So let's see. So let's back an old backup. Apologies. Okay. It's Konvoy cluster, new cluster. Okay. What I want to show, let's see if the demo gods are helping us here. Yeah, yes, it is restoring the backup now. And as you can see, this had hourly backups. It's going to continue to incrementally restore from all the backups I took earlier. So when you have a lot of backup, of course, when you take a daily backup, you should build a strategy that also need to have a weekly backups as well. And if you need to recover from a backup, a specific backup, you can get it back. So, and as you can see, incrementally, so this is recovering all the backups, and then first to recover the oldest one, and on top of it, and now recovering my other backups. And this will take a lot of backups here. But in the meantime, let's take a look. So now you can see the mini on OpenEBS, so which is a good sign. And before I do, last thing, so I will create the service. So this will create the load balancer and give me a point to connect. But as you can see, what we can do here, just get PVCs in Minio on OpenEBS. So it is bound, the same 10G is now created here. And then when the load balancer up, I will be able to get to the same data. So this is pretty much it about Director Online and then Konvoy. Let me go back to the slides and get some questions in the meantime.
Yeah, we have a first question from David. What is the difference between default local provisioner and OpenEBS local provisioner?
Oh, good question. So let me put this again to full screen. Local provisioner in Kubernetes is a static provisioner that you need to create your PVs in advance. And in a large environment, especially where you have this on-prem or cloud, this may become a bit complicated. The first deployment might be easy. You create an on-demand queue PVs, but later managing multiple PVCs and dynamically when failures happen is really difficult. In OpenEBS provides a dynamic volume provisioner option. It's actually a good question. So OpenEBS is provides a pluggable architecture. If your applications don't need high availability, like workloads like Elastic or Kafka, you can actually use the local PV, and by using OpenEBS dynamic local provisioner, you automate creation of local PVs as well. And OpenEBS doesn't get into the way to your data, so it gives you the same local PVs, and we support both host path and block device local PVs dynamically.
Okay, thank you.
I hope it
Another one. Yes, another one. Can I also use Jiva and CStore at the same time?
Yes, I could show you that too, but that's an idea of CAS. It's very granular. You create storage classes and use parts of OpenEBS based on what your application needs. So like I said, in a Konvoy in our demo is deployed on CStore engine, which is an enterprise class storage engine. But if your workloads are running on low-end systems, like let's say in ARM devices, you can also use Jiva. It's a replicated low footprint storage engine, doesn't have all the bells and whistles of C-store, but at the same time, you can also use local PV in the same environment for different workloads.
Yeah, on the same topic, I use another one here. So that I'll answer. So can you tell us a little bit more about the different storage engines? So the OpenEBS has been built with the concept of pluggable storage engines. We started the project with one. Then we had Jiva, then we had C-Store, then we had local PV, and we have recently open source. So it's some sort of a soft launch of MayaStore, which is a game changer in the storage for Kubernetes space because it bypassed the Linux kernel. It writes straight to the disk, so it has been optimized for NVMe devices. We're talking about millions of IOPS coming from a single container. So that's the value. So some users request better performance, and in response to that, well, we started building that revolutionary data plane, declarative data plane, which will change the storage forever in Kubernetes. And there's also another question, last but least, coming from the same person, David, can you also explain the replica factor used in the config?
Oh, yes, I don't know if you had the conversation with you yesterday, but I guess it may have come from someone else yesterday as well. So replica factor, you can set that replica factor in your storage class. And then to clear the confusion, I think we got a similar question in the community yesterday. So when you have a replica one, it's actually a single copy, not you have one replica. So if you want to protect your application in a high availability fashion, you need to set it to 3. So that way you get the quorum. So if you have a node failure, and you will always have more than 50% data available, so they will be always write access. And of course, if you lose both two copies of that, and your data will be still accessible until, but it will be in the read-only mode to protect from corruption until the other two node comes back, or we create two new replicas to satisfy the quorum needs. Yeah.
Excellent, perfect, thank you. So we got one questions over chat, 3 questions over the Q&A. That's good. So I'll take over.
Control, yeah. Here we go.
Thank you. So basically, how to get started. Just a quick summary here. Well, the best way to get started is definitely to reach out to MayaData. There's a free trial button that at the top. This is where you have access to the commercial platform. This is where you can create an account. You can single sign on with different platforms to it. You can also, if you would like to continue that discussion, you can request a demo. And we will be more than happy to cover D2iQ Konvoy as well as OpenEBS associated requests. As you can see, we can definitely demo both platforms at the same time. So don't be shy, reach out. You can book demo or just create an account and get the ball rolling. Every 1 year, we'll also receive a link to download our joint solution brief, Deploy OpenEBS on Konvoy. It's going to be available through the resource section on the website, but you'll get a personalized link to download it. It explains all the steps needed to deploy OpenEBS in Konvoy and all the benefits of using OpenEBS in conjunction with D2iQ Konvoy and the other solutions in the portfolio. One question that we answer very often, what's the difference between the community version of OpenEBS Enterprise Platform and the community version of OpenEBS versus OpenEBS Enterprise Platform? Well, first and foremost, they're both open source. OpenEBS Director is only packaged with OpenEBS Enterprise Platform. But OpenEBS is open source, and there's a strong commitment from our part to keep OpenEBS open source, especially that now it's a CNCF project. So a lot of other sponsors, other companies contributing to the code. On the commercial side, well, you get performance enhancement, you get updates, bug and patches. It's all personalized. Your configuration is loaded in the system in the CI. So every commit made to the code of OpenEBS is tested against your configuration, and you get up to 13 months of retention of your log on OpenEBS Director that used to be known as Maya Online, as well as all the data migration, backup, and so on features that were demoed today. And of course, you support the open source project and the open source community around it. How to get the ball rolling, oops, went too far, right? It is very inexpensive. We have the starter pack, start at $63 per month for a couple of cores. It also includes 10 hours of professional services to make sure that you're successful with Kubernetes, you're with Convoy, to make sure you're successful with OpenEBS. So that's definitely, strongly encourage you to engage a conversation with us, get the ball rolling, and make sure that you spend more time coding, building your applications instead of dealing and managing the problems associated with the deployment of stateful applications on Kubernetes. On that, would like to thank you, Michael and Murat, for your participation in today's session. And the session will be is recorded and will be become available on our website in the next couple of hours. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.